In this video, we're going to be walking through the customer empathy map. Now, if you haven't already, I would encourage you to go back and watch a previous video on design thinking, where I kind of lay out the design thinking process, of which the customer empathy map is a component of that. So that will give you some really important backstory kind of into this process. The customer empathy map really is almost the first stage of that process, along with a couple of other things. So it'll give you a little bit wider context to kind of what we're talking about here. Ultimately, we're engaged in this process of empathy, which we know is critically important, because the better that we understand our customers and their needs and frustrations, the better we are equipped to be able to deliver a product or service that is going to satisfy and meet those needs and satisfy those frustrations. So the customer empathy map is a simple tool that we use all the time in business that is meant to help us develop a customer profile. And so a lot of times when we think of profiles, we think of social media profiles, and on those social media profiles contain a lot of information about us, right? Most of which we freely divulge. And so if you think about a Facebook profile, you divulge obviously your age as a condition for using the service, but we also put in education and work history and interests and likes and those types of things. That's essentially what we want to do for our customers in a really less creepy way. But the reason we want to do this and develop this profile is so that we have an accurate picture in our minds on who we're creating our product for. Because if we do that, then we're probably going to make a better product, right? Versus if we only have a very vague and general understanding of who we're selling to, like everyone, or men, or women, or people between the ages of 25 and 44. So this is really kind of the end result of that empathy process. So up to this point, what we should have done is we should have engaged in the process of customer discovery, right? Interacting with customers and learning more about them. The output of that is the customer empathy map, where we're going to literally throw the information here on a page, and then we're going to be able to view our customer in some way or another. So the way you want to tackle the empathy map, and again, I encourage you to do that work ahead of time. It'll make this a lot more fruitful. Of course, you can fill in anything you want on the map, and it's not going to be helpful unless it's based upon a fundamental understanding of your customer. So long intro just to get to the map here. But let's get into it. So as you can see here, there's a number of different kind of sections of the map. So I want to start here at the top. And the first thing here is the customer perspective, which is in this box over here. So this is where you actually describe the customer. Now, what I love about these tools is there's not a lot of space, and that is by design, because if we need a lot of words to communicate something, if we can't boil it down to a couple of words, usually it means that we need to think through it and refine it in some greater detail. So that's why there's not a lot of space here, and that's, again, by design. So here you're going to put, who is our customer? Who's the person that you are kind of mapping out, if you will? Who's the person that you are trying to walk in their shoes, so to speak, and write as much information about them as you possibly can? So that's where you're going to put in this box here, the customer perspective. You don't need to include a long list of different details and things, but you do want to have a short phrase or sentence that describes this particular customer, whether it's single moms or college students that live at home, or something that kind of represents that particular group. Over here, you can keep track of design by, the date, and the iteration. I actually really do like this particular piece here on iteration, because a lot of times you're doing this multiple times, especially if you're constantly interacting with customers. And so because you can have multiple different customer empathy maps out there, it's always helpful to know which one's the most recent one, right? So if you name this, well, this is iteration 1, and then you have 2, and then 3, then 4. It's helpful to keep track of them for that reason. Now on the map itself, you'll notice that there are 4 quadrants, and there are also a couple of boxes at the very bottom. So the way that you fill this out in order is we start on the right-hand side here, and then we jump to the left-hand side, then we go to the top, and then the bottom, and then we go over here lastly to the pain and the gain, which I will of course kind of explain so that you know what to do. So now that we know kind of the order that we fill this out, and it'll make sense as we go through it, Let's talk about the individual quadrants. So the first section is, what does she see? Now, she is just a female pronoun, obviously, so you can insert anybody into that. Obviously, if your particular customer is male, then that will apply. So don't let that throw you off. So what does she see? So this is getting at what we call the environment. So we want to know, in what environment is your customer commonly involved in? Right? What are the things that are around them that potentially might influence them in some way? Right? So if your customer was single moms, and I would encourage you to be specific. So you could say, my customer is a single mom who is 27 years old and has 2 kids and blah, blah, blah. And you can be as specific as you want. But being specific helps you imagine the person, right? If you give an age range, it's really hard to come up with what this person looks like and how they interact and those types of things, because it's a general range and it's not very specific. So think about the environment that they operate in. What do they see? What's around the environment? Who are their friends? And you don't know exactly who they are, but describe them, and all these other different things. We want to get a look at, what does their world look like? Now, you could think about this in a very general sense and, obviously think about everything, and that could make this exercise very challenging. You can also look at this in a very narrow sense, which means you're looking at them specifically like in their house or in the context to which they're trying to buy your particular product. Those are 2 different approaches. Really, it's up to you. I always find that it's pretty helpful to have maybe a little bit broader view of it, because if we just look at it from the context of if they're going to buy our products or not, we're ignoring quite a bit in their environment. So pick one thing. Maybe the environment is home, and we want to have a little bit of a description of what life is like at home, right? As much as possible. Again, we don't want to assume. We want to interact. So the customer discovery piece is really important here, because we're going to develop and identify a couple of trends that we see across multiple interactions that's going to help us answer this question. You can start by guessing if you want, but then we have to go out and talk to customers to see if our assumptions actually hold. Now, in this section here, what we see and hear, so the environment, of course, influences what we actually hear in this section, which is why we start on the right-hand side and make our way over to the left. So here we want to think about, what are the things that influence my customer? What are the messages that they hear, right? Who are the people that are influential that they seek out information from? Maybe it's a certain type of blog. Maybe it's social media, maybe it's a variety of different things. So once we know what the environment is like, well, then we can look at, well, what are the things that this person hears? What's the message like? That becomes very important. Once we finish that section, then we know that our environment influences what we hear. What we hear obviously influences what we think and feel. And so in this third section here, we're trying to get inside the psyche of the person. Right? What are the things that they think about on a regular basis? Not only generally speaking, but also in the context of the problem that you think exists, right? And so if the problem that you think is somewhat of safety, what are the thoughts and the feelings of a single mom regarding safety? It could be that I'm a bad parent, or some of those other types of things. So we're trying to get a little bit more detailed. Again, the only way we're going to get here is if we go back to the customer discovery pieces and we interact with customers on a regular basis, right? What are their worries? What are their preoccupations? What are their concerns? What are their aspirations, right? Trying to get inside the psyche of your customer is really important, because what people think and feel influences what they say and do, influences their behavior. So what are their general attitudes, possibly appearance, maybe behavior towards others? Those are the questions that are the characteristics that we're trying to figure out. And again, this all stems from what the environment is, and that influences every step of the way here. Now, this is very, very conceptual, as you can imagine, and so most people have a very big problem with this, because unlike a lot of things, there's not really a right and wrong answer. There's more in right and wrong process. So again, customer discovery is very important here. Otherwise, you're just going through the motions of filling stuff out. And as you're doing this, it's complete garbage. But if you have an understanding of your customer, it makes it easier to fill this stuff out. Now, the bottom section here is what you fill out last. These are the pains and the gains here. So this is ultimately kind of a sort of a blend of thinking and feeling, but it's really in the context of kind of the problem or the frustration that you think people have. So the first thing is, in the pain section, what are the fears, frustrations, and obstacles that people experience associated with this problem that you think people have, right? Trying to make it as vivid as you possibly can. And then in the gain section, what does it look like if this problem was solved for the person, right? What does success look like, or the measure of success? What would the person, how would they feel if they were able to extinguish the issue that was causing this pain here? If this went away and we solved it, what would that look like for them? What would that be? Now, you're probably thinking, like, who cares? Does this really matter? Well, this is really important, because the pains and the frustrations, we see a lot of that in marketing, right? So when you're looking at an advertisement, whether it's on social media, whether it's on TV or on the radio, marketers are very good at identifying what are the problems, right? The things that they're talking about. And they're also really good at developing how much better your life is going to be once you use this particular product, right? What are the gains? How does this feel? And it's not necessarily always obvious at first, but by thinking through some of these things that on the surface don't seem all that important, we can set ourselves up to win later on, because we're going to have such an easier time developing a message and branding and doing all of these things, because we know exactly the couple of points that we're trying to address as a frustration that our customer has. And we also know very clearly the one or two things that if you use my product or service, this is how your life is going to be better. And ultimately, people purchase products because of the benefits that they get from them. At the end of the day, we buy something because it provides us with some kind of benefit, whether that benefit is pretty simple, right? So you think food, obviously the benefit is not being hungry, not being hangry, right? All those different things. But maybe the benefit is peace of mind, right? Safety, security. Maybe the benefit is positive self-esteem, right? These are all things that are important with marketing, and we're only going to uncover if we have a good understanding of our customer. So I would encourage you, try to take a stab at filling out your empathy map. I would encourage you to use sticky notes if at all possible. Sticky notes are great because if something you put on there you don't like, you don't have to scribble it out or erase it. You can simply throw away the sticky note and add more on there. So it works really good. Even works better if they're all different multicolored. Just kind of makes it look fun. Doesn't really matter all that much, but it could be a fun part of the process. And again, this process is all about creativity. So feel free to make it your own. But I can't emphasize enough, the starting point to this needs to be some kind of customer interaction as a basis for filling this out. Your empathy map is an output of that kind of process. It is not the starting point, and so it's meant to be a reflection of what you know about your customer that you can refine over time, as opposed to one thing that you create that is static and never evolving, which of course is completely impractical. So I hope that helps with your understanding of the empathy map. Good luck.